I'm going to show you how to use fabric pens on our cotton fabric to apply colour and pattern to our designs. Now, we're not only going to use the fabric pens as you would think to just draw straight with the fabric pens onto the fabric. I'm going to show you an interesting way of how you can use water and paintbrushes to really creatively use those fabric pens, almost as if they were like watercolour. So a really interesting way is to use masking tape. You can use masking tape to create really nice sharp lines with your fabric pens and using the watercolour technique with the fabric pens. So if you lay your masking tape along one of the straight edges that you wish to paint, I'm going to do this small corner over here to start with. And I'm going to choose the colour fabric pen that I want, and I'm going to choose green for this area, and I'm going to draw straight onto the fabric with my fabric pens. Now I'm just going to draw it as thick as I can, applying quite a lot of ink from the fabric pen to the fabric, just on the edge. Now I'm going to take my paintbrush, dip it in a bit of water, and I'm going to just wet the area that I have just drawn on with the fabric pen. And you can smudge that colour from the fabric pen across your fabric. And you don't have to be too neat because we've got our masking tape there that's going to stop any of that dye running into the fabric. Now that's called resisting the dye. So the masking tape is acting as a resist on the fabric. Okay. Now ideally we'd want that to dry a little bit, but just so that I can show you the effect, I'll pull that off and you will see it creates a nice sharp edge there. Okay. You don't have to use the masking tape to create the watercolour effect. You can draw along your line here, along one of the lines you wish to draw. I'm going to draw along here. I'm also going to draw along this line here, as straight and as neat as possible. Just like that. And then again, I'm going to take my paintbrush with a bit of water, and I'm going to see if I can create a nice blending effect with the water. I'm just going to go smudge the edges, and just let that dye from the fabric pen run into the fabric. So almost have a nice light blue coming out from that blue line there. I have to be a little bit more careful here because I don't have anything resisting on the other side of my blue line over here, and I want to keep that nice and sharp, that line. I don't want any water to blend that side in. Okay, a bit more water, let it blend out. So we're almost painting Well, we are painting using fabric pens. Okay, so that's blended out nicely there. I like how that's faded off the end there. Okay, now we can keep doing this. You don't have to use the fabric pens with water. You can just do a solid block of colour like this. Just drawing very carefully and then filling in. Now you do have to be very careful not to move your fabric around, because you do have wet. If you can see here where the green part is, that part's wet. And if you move it around onto a part that's not been coloured, that wet part underneath will transfer onto your fabric. So you do have to keep it very, very still. If you're having trouble keeping it still, you can tape with a masking tape your design to the paper and it will stay in place. Okay, so I've got a nice block of brown there. Now I'm going to use the masking tape. I'm going to do another watercolour effect in this shape down here. Carefully using my lines I've drawn as a guide for where I'm going to put the masking tape. Like this. Making sure it's stuck down on the edges because you don't want any of that water going underneath that masking tape. So make sure it's nice and stuck to your fabric there. Okay, I'm going to do brown again. I'm going to show how the two effects do differ. I'm going to put a bit of brown on there and I'm going to get it to blend using my paintbrush here. Creating a very different colour there. It's really, really nice to see how adding water can really change the look and colour of the fabric pens and how they're used. Okay, and I could keep blending so the edge of that pen isn't so sharp. Okay, I think that's the best we're going to get on that one. Okay, and then again, I'll take that off so you can see how nice and sharp those edges are, even though I've used the watercolour on there. Okay, now I'm going to continue and I'm going to see how I can blend two different colours together using that same technique. So I'm going to go up in the corner up here. And I'm going to blend, I'm going to start with orange, a bit of orange on the edge there. And then I'm going to use a red. Let's see if I can create a nice effect blending the red into the orange here. Wow, that looks really good. It's blending really nicely, especially the red. Blend them into each other. And again, out the other side. That goes to the edge of the fabric. And again, work into the lines you've drawn so that it blends it out nicely. Okay. So I have a nice blended colour now. The orange into the red. I'm going to take that off and see how it looks. There we go. Again, a nice sharp line on the edge there. Okay. I'm going to continue this and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. Okay, so I've now done all of the coloured parts that I wanted to include in my design. Now, if you can see, I made a little bit of a mistake here where I had a bit of the fabric pen that was wet on my fingers, and then I've moved my material here and it's transferred onto there. So be very, very careful of that as well, because it will stay in that place if you get it there. Okay, I'm now going to use a black pen, and black biro actually works absolutely fine for doing outlines on the fabric. Okay, as long as you're very, very careful, and again using your ruler when you're doing your straight lines. Now I'm going to outline most of what I've done here. I'm going to outline all of the pencil lines that I've done here. I think I'm going to leave this one here because I quite like that as a blue line here. But all the other lines I'm going to outline here. Okay. So simply as you did with your pencil lines, do the same, being very careful this time because there's no going back once you have drawn using your biro. Okay. And I'm going to keep going until I've done all of the areas that I wanted to do.